Case and Breton wash. So let's jump into game one and see if some of the top picks that Lee and I have set our sights on are going to be able to jump out into this match. Chuy is leading out with that Rotom to our delight, paired up with the Dragapult. Whereas on the opposing side of the field for Gabriel, there is Colossal and Urshifu, and this looks like a very classic setup combination, Lee.
Yeah, you're going to see potentially an Aqua Jet here into the Colossal, activate that Steam Engine, activate the weakness policy, and then the Colossal, G-Max Colossal, is set to get going in this game and make it very difficult for Chuy straight off the bat. But the thing is, Chuy has some nice options here. Obviously got the Rotom Wash, could decide to Dynamax that, and he could throw in a big Max Vortex, or Max Geyser, sorry, into that G-Max Colossal slot, which will be a big threat for Gabriel to kind of keep in mind going into this first turn.
That's the thing, if you are Gabriel Agati and want to set up your Colossal, if you're Chuy, then you have to commit to that Rotom. You have to maybe try and make sure that it's going to hit with a water type move, or maybe risk something like a Hydro Pump miss. So it depends if Gabriel is going to be brave and maybe see if they can knock Chuy down into a situation here. But Chuy's actually going to Dynamax up the Dragapult on this occasion, so wants to apply some pressure using that particular Pokemon. And on Gabriel's side, no surprises, Lee, we're going to be able to see a Gigantamax Colossal come into the fray, and I wonder if this is going to be a direct bold setup with using something like the Aqua Jet. Other than the Rotom, there isn't really that much threat coming down to the Colossal. If it can get its activations up, it's going to look formidable going into that next turn as well by having the speed advantage against a Pokemon like the Dragapult. You can see it happening though here. The Aqua Jet has connected. There is no sun in the sky or anything though, so it does deal a considerable amount of damage. That's something that Gabriel has to have in his calculations when maybe having to take an attack. And is able to go for the G-Max Volcalith here, connecting down onto the opposing Rotom here, deals a huge chunk of damage, and of course we'll be able to set up the rocks as well for those residual effects starting to chip away at the end of every turn.
Yeah, but the Rotom here showing it's being trained extremely well, being able to take that attack very well, you know, even after the weakness policy boost and then activate its own sort of vein of recovery here. So the Rotom going to be able to get an attack off. At least the Dragapult goes for the max airstream, kind of helping it out with the speed control and getting ever closer to that Colossal now. And an Eerie Impulse coming out from the Rotom Wash into the Colossal, really just nullifying that special attack boost that it's just received from its weakness policy, Lou.
Oh, amazing to see that on Rotom. Really not a popular choice in Rotom. We often see it kind of running Protect over what I think Eerie Impulse will have covered in those move slots there. So nice to see that Chuy does have an option here to kind of make Colossal a little bit less of a threat here and counteract that weakness policy boost. Of course, the speed is up on Gabriel's side of the field, but Dragapult did go for that max airstream, doing a huge chunk of damage to the Urshifu and also critically breaking that focus sash, but boosting up the speed on Chuy's side of the field by 1 point each for Rotom and Dragapult.
Yeah, and now the Rotom probably in range now to go down to the residual damage from the G-Max Volcalith. So maybe Chuy wants to just keep it on the field here just to, you know, if it's not targeted, then he'll be able to get at least an attack off. But we are going to see Gabriel not really want to take any risks with a potential Hydro Pump that could come out there and cause further disruption.
Yeah, Dragapult going to go for the Max Phantasm here into that Urshifu, pick up the solid KO and obviously lower the defense on Gabriel's Colossal as well. I really like that play by Gabriel though. Like you said, doesn't risk a potential Hydro Pump, and then if for whatever reason the Rotom did want to switch out, you would have been able to catch the Pokemon on the switch in there with the G-Max Volcalith as well. So a really nice play. Put KOs on either side, and this is where things get interesting for these players. You now get the opportunity to bring in a Pokemon from the back, change up the ball position a little bit more, and maybe try and support your Dynamax Pokemon that's on the field.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like the way that Gabriel went after the Rotom there was just a safe play. And like you say, if you catch anything on the switch in, it's such a bonus at that point. So you know, a lot of players, when Pokemon are so low with the residual damage in effect, you kind of leave those alone. But I think it was worthwhile not doing that this time around. We both see the both players now opting for their restricted of choosing in Series 8 and bringing in their Zacians. So we have the Zacians on the field, obviously both getting that Intrepid Sword boost and both having that +1 attack, making them quite threatening, especially against Dynamax Pokemon or Gigantamax Pokemon that either player is facing down against, because that Behemoth Blade is obviously going to get that boost to its attack on Dynamax Pokemon, doubling damage on Dynamax Pokemon, so it's going to be able to do extremely big amounts of damage. The Dragapult quite threatened here. It does have the Airstream in effect, so it is +1 speed, but the Colossal in a decent position, you know, already, and can threaten the Zacian probably more than the Zacian can threaten the Dragapult.
I mean, that's the thing, the Zacian's here being the supportive Pokemon and actually going for some defensive play here, not wanting to take any damage from these Dynamax Pokemon here. Colossal going for the Max Flare, of course, it's formidable with its fire typing into that opposing Zacian, even through the Protect, is able to do a decent amount of chip damage there. Zacian, as you can see, couldn't fully protect itself, but we're going to see these Pokemon both kind of stepping on the defensive on this turn. It's really going to be all about those Dynamax Pokemon. I love this play here, going for the Max Wormwood. We know that that wouldn't be able to connect onto the Zacian due to the typing, but critically it will still lower the attack of that Zacian, being able to counteract the Intrepid Sword boost while also getting a decent chunk of damage onto that opposing Colossal. So really well calculated by Chuy. Chuy, you can see, is really trying to think about what they want to achieve, what kind of steps and measures they want to put down onto Gabriel's team to try and look towards that end game state.
Yeah, and the attack drop there is a nice option. You think Chuy's got two options there. You can go for the Airstream or you can go for the Wormwind, and it's probably better off if you don't have something with Intimidate in the back to get the Wormwind into the Colossal. Get some nice damage onto it as well and reduce that attack boost on the opposing Zacian, making it a little bit easier to handle. But you can see already that the residual damage chipping away at both of Chuy's side of the field with those G-Max Volcalith, kind of making it difficult to survive attacks, even though that the Colossal has been reduced in damage with the Eerie Impulse in the sun. The Heat Wave able to pick up the knockout on the Zacian, which is pretty huge.
Yeah, exactly. Being able to find its mark and do some devastation due to the sun boost. Drupies, however, want to get in on the action. Takes the Colossal down to 1 HP with the second Drupee able to come in and get the KO. Very helpful Pokemon there for the Dragapult to get the solid KO against the Colossal. But Zacian is then free to go for the Behemoth Blade. This is going to jump up and connect down onto that opposing Dragapult. And, ooh, looks like it is able to get the KO against it.
Yeah, big turn here for Gabriel, being able to remove both of Chuy's Pokemon from the field and leaving with one. And Gabriel's still got the Salamence in the back to come in now, provide some sort of Intimidate support if it wants to, and just another offensive threat on whatever Chuy's got. But if you're going to have one Pokemon left, it would be the Venusaur with the Sun Up. Does come in, it's going to be the fastest thing on the field, Lou, and it's going to be able to provide a lot of pressure to both the Zacian and the Salamence. Probably the Salamence a bit more threatening with the potential flying type attacks here than the Zacian. It's still going to be very difficult for the Venusaur to do it, but if you can manage to get 2 sleep powders onto these targets and then try and get maximum sleep turns, you've got a chance.
Well, it's actually going to be the Earth Power going straight down into that Zacian. Looks like it's going to be a 2-hit KO, and Venusaur doing a little bit of damage with its recoil as well, thanks to its Life Orb. Behemoth Blade's going to come out from this opposing, from the Zacian into the opposing Venusaur and do a huge chunk of damage, and now it's all really up to Salamence to be able to pick up the KO here and going safely for the Outrage here, knowing it's going to be able to find its mark, taking game 1 for Gabriel Agati. Things could have been very different there with some sleep powders, but looks like Gabriel was able to capitalize on the Earth Power and take game 1.
Yeah, and playing the Zacian really well in the end game there, you know. The sleep powder would have complicated things, but I think he got himself into a great position in that end game to kind of close it up and make it difficult for Chuy to really get any sort of momentum from that point. It's all about getting that Colossal set up early game, really, that allowed him that option. The Rotom play with the Eerie Impulse was really nice from Chuy. You think at that point, okay, well, the G-Max Colossal's not as threatening, and it definitely wasn't, but it still showed how really dangerous it can be. For the fact that it stayed on the field for so long after that Eerie Impulse, and the fact that, you know, the residual damage kind of just chipped away enough at both opposing Pokemon that whenever they were out on Chuy's side to really kind of get enough momentum to kind of come back at Gabriella with any sort of kind of fight.
Well, let's keep the momentum rolling, Lee, and jump straight into game 2 and see how the end game's going to look up against that particular match. Very interesting choices from that Venusaur there. And we see the Dragapult and Rotom coming out from Chuy. Great to see the Rotom here out in the action once again, paired up with Urshifu and Colossal on Gabriel's side. I wonder, Lee, if we're going to see Colossal try and get its boosts up.
You would imagine so, and you think, why not go for the boosts here? You went for it in game 1, it worked out pretty well for you. You've got to contend with something like the Eerie Impulse, obviously, but that Rotom could be a little more threatening as well, because it might not decide to go for the Eerie Impulse. It might this turn decide to go for the Dynamax and go for a Max Geyser into the Colossal, which would be very detrimental. But it's an option for Gabriel here. You can see he is going in between options here, whether he wants to stay on the field of the Colossal or if he wants to switch out. But I think the balls and Chuy's field now, he doesn't need to go for the Eerie Impulse. It was a nice option, but it didn't really work out as well as he planned here. And I think if he'd removed the Colossal a lot sooner, I think the game would have maybe been a bit easier for him to kind of close out.
Yeah, maybe needs to shake things up a little bit for that Rotom, maybe make it less of a support Pokemon and go really in on the offensive. And that's exactly what we get to see, Lee. We get to see that Dynamax Rotom here, maybe trading out the support type moves for something like a powerful Max Geyser just to stop the Colossal from getting itself into its stead. Particularly if you know you've got this Urshifu right next to it, it looks like a really easy strategy here to be able to go for that side activation. You want to try and make sure that Colossal isn't going to be able to run through your team throughout the game. It's turn 1, let's step up on the offensive. And you can see from Gabriel's side of things as well, we're going to see that Gigantamax Colossal jump into the fray.
Yeah, and as long as it gets the Gmax Volcalith off this turn, then it's kind of... Gigalith's almost done its job, you know. The more turns you get on the field with it is a bonus, really, but you want that residual damage because how he utilized the Zacian last game, where it came in and kind of just put that instant pressure on everything, and with the residual damage was enough to kind of clean up everything. The thing with Rotom is it resists Zacian's big steel attack, so it can match up pretty well against it. But we're not going to see the Volcalith here. We're going to see the Overgrowth after the weakness policy activation, but the Rotom taking that pretty comfortably.
Yeah, it's able to take it, and there was no Max Flare, then there's no Sun in the Sky to negate the water type attacks either that this Rotom can potentially throw out. Dragapult's going to leave us, going to go for a little Phantom Force, and it is indeed going to be the Max Geyser coming out from this Rotom, going straight down into that Colossal, and easily is able to take it down. So that's a sigh of relief there for Chuy. It no longer has to deal with the Colossal, and Gabriel Agati loses his Dynamax Pokemon very early on in this game too.
Yeah, and without it really doing very much at all, you know, it's set up the grassy terrain, it's got a bit of damage onto the Rotom, but it's not really been very effective, not like we've known Colossal to be in the past, and that just shows how good an option Rotom Wash is against something like the Gigantamax Colossal here. Chuy making a really great play here, not opting to kind of slow it down or use potentially support tools, just going for that offense, and going on the offensive here has really paid off for him. Zacian now coming onto the field, but the Dragapult has slinked away, Lou. It is using that Phantom Force, so it is going to get a free attack this turn. Has to be wary of the potential Urshifu, getting the attack off after this Surgeon Strike. Not going to be super effective though, but the Zacian, of course, is always a threat whenever it pops up onto the field.
Yeah, the Dragapult slinks back into the fray and is able to break the Focus Sash on that opposing Urshifu there. Behemoth Blade is going to come out from the Zacian, however, goes into the Rotom, and although you said Rotom can take this relatively well, you can see it hanging on there, it still does a decent chunk and puts it potentially in range of something from this Urshifu. Of course, Rotom does have its berry though, that's going to let it, using its Wiki Berry, regain some HP and let it be a little bit more comfortable. But Surging Strikes in the rain, always a little bit of a worry, particularly with those guaranteed critical hits, but it actually targets down into that Dragapult, maybe getting a little bit of revenge for the fact that it did the Phantom Force into it.
Yeah, and now the Rotom free to get an attack off, and it'll be interesting to see where Chuy goes. If it's into this Zacian, which you can imagine the Max Geyser coming out, rain boosted, is it going to be enough? Not against this Zacian. We've already seen before how well trained defensively this Zacian is on Gabriel's side of the field. Does a nice amount of damage and definitely puts it in a closer range to be knocked out from something like another double up from the Rotom and the Dragapult. But the problem is the Dragapult hasn't really got the attacks to go into the Zacian like single target without going for the Phantom Force.
Yeah, exactly. And you can see the health kind of chipping away at these Pokemon as well. Urshifu looking relatively healthy, but it does have to worry about a potential kind of electric type move coming out from this Rotom as well, being the water type variant of Urshifu. It's not going to appreciate taking those moves at all. Dragapult as well, being the speedy thing that it is, can also slink off the field once again, go for another one of those Phantom Forces. So Urshifu just going straight for a detected, doesn't want to find itself the target of this Rotom. Dragapult actually going for the Dragon Darts here, so a good protect, not going to be able to find either mark on the opposing side of the field. And Zacian is then free to go for this Behemoth Blade, goes down into the Rotom here. Ooh,
to
Rotom
survive.
looks like it's able to just hang on. That's exactly what Rotom needs to be able to go for another Max Geyser in the rain, boosting up his water type attacks and find its mark down on that Zacian and pick up a clean KO against it.
Wow, Rotom Wash has really shown its dominance and usefulness in this match for Chuy. Chuy piloting it really well, knowing comfortably there that it's going to be able to take another Behemoth Blade after that initial one the last turn. And the Dragapult Dragon Darts option there, because of the smart targeting that Dragon Darts has, because of the Fairy type and on Zacian, Dragapult kind of confident knowing that if it targets into either one of those Pokemon, it's going to redirect into the Urshifu, hit it for double damage there and be enough to take it down. So not a threat to worry about for the Rotom, leaving it kind of open to take down that Zacian.
Yeah, and Rotom's Dynamax turns will now end, so it's going to have to rely on being able to hit those critical Hydro Pumps potentially, but I think it's going to be more about those electric type moves. It's able to maybe do some good damage to both Salamence and Urshifu. They don't want to take those electric type moves at all, but Rotom being at such low HP and Urshifu able to capitalize on something like an Aqua Jet could be a little bit difficult here. Dragapult's just going to go straight for the Protect though, playing defensively, and Chuy really does have all the utility with the Pokemon in the back. So even though Rotom is going to fall victim to this Aqua Jet, it does allow Chuy to bring in one of his two remaining Pokemon that are still yet to be revealed from the back. The dual Wind Beat as well, unable to find its mark thanks to the Protect.
Yeah, the Dragapult Protect there, just nice, just biding Chewy's time to make sure that, you know, the Rotom was so low health. It was going to go down whatever hit at that turn. So just allowing something to come in for Chuy here and be the thing that helps kind of clean up this match. And what better Pokemon to come in than the Zacian in this situation? Getting that Intrepid Sword boost, and it's going to be able to deal with easily able to deal with the Urshifu or the Salamence here on Gabriel's side of the field.
Exactly, being able to keep that +1 attack boost as well. Salamence is already on the field, no switchability for Gabriel. You don't have to worry about any intimidates, and it really is Zacian's room here at the moment. Dragon Dart's going to come out though, going to connect down onto that opposing Urshifu. One Dreepy, followed up by the other one into that Salamence. Does a huge amount of damage thanks to the typing, and Zacian is able to go with the Behemoth Blade to follow up as well and try and pick up a solid KO here for Chuy and just leave one remaining Pokemon for Gabriel, but to no avail. Urshifu able to hang on.
Wow, that's a big hang on there, because you know that the Urshifu really good on the defensive side of things as well, just showing that capability there. And obviously with this water typing as well, kind of resists the steel typing from the Zacian, so I'm going to be able to hang on. And now it gets a bit more difficult for Chuy to close this one up against two Pokemon, especially with these Surging Strikes in the rain that are going to do a lot of damage. Obviously these critical hits coming out every time, and you can see the damage just chipping away at the Zacian, putting it right down here. And now the problem that Zacian has, it can only target one Pokemon at a time. You ignore the other one, and the opposite one will knock you out, unfortunately.
Yeah, Zacian breathing a sigh of relief. The grassy terrain is actually still in effect, able to regain a little bit of HP, but won't be able to anymore. It leaves just as I mention it. And like you said there, Lee, the fact that Zacian can only target down one Pokemon does give Gabriel the advantage to now maybe play a little bit more strategically, can go for some kind of protective measures. We know that's not something that Chuy has the luxury of being able to do when you're down against an Urshifu with its ability.
Yeah, and that's a problem. And you know, the Venusaur coming onto the fields, really good for the Urshifu matchup, but not so great against the Salamence matchup. Now you can protect the Venusaur completely by just going for the Salamence, but Gabriel could kind of read into that, protect the Salamence here, and then use the Urshifu to attack into the Zacian. You will obviously lose the Urshifu to the Venusaur, but then you've got Salamence versus Venusaur as the endgame with dual wing beats. That could be a way for Gabriel to kind of close this matchup.
Well, Urshifu going to go for the Detect. Zacian going for the Behemoth Blade, pulls it down onto that opposing Salamence. Really wants to make sure it's going to protect the Venusaur from taking any of those dual wing beats, and that's exactly what it's able to do. So Venusaur is going to be protected a little bit more going into this next turn. Goes for that Sludge Bomb though, of course not going to be able to find its mark thanks to the Protect. But Urshifu again, in that same kind of precarious situation that we were saying about with Zacian, it can only really target one opposing Pokemon, and Chuy has two of those left on the field.
Yeah, and the way that Chuy's kind of preserved that Venusaur till the end game here, and the Zacian as well, has just like pushed him over the edge here. You know, it's made it too difficult for Gabriel to kind of come back in a situation what looked like almost a kind of given that he was going to be able to close this one out. But all credit to Chuy here tying it up and taking the score to 1-1, meaning that Lou, we're going to be going into game 3, which is excellent news for myself, I'm sure for you, and for all our viewers at home.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to showcase as much action as we possibly can here on the Players Cut Through broadcast. But the thing I really want to champion was the adjustment there with the Rotom from Chuy. Being able to bring it in and switch it up from being supported with Eerie Impulse to just going straight on the offensive with the Max Geyser, which critically, once you've done the first Max Geyser and the rain is there on the battlefield, you can then boost up your water type moves as well. And I think you made a really good point, Lee, as well about how the Rotom's able to kind of counter the damage that Gabriel really wants to deal out with those Behemoth Blades and with the Surging Strikes. Rotom can take them much easier than some other Pokemon, particularly when it's in its Dynamax. So it was a great call there from Chuy, and it was amazing to see that actually, until the very last couple of turns in that game, we didn't know what his last 2 remaining Pokemon were. He was able to observe them so well, and that combination of Rotom and Dragapult was really, really key.
Yeah, and you get to points in that game and you think, has he still got 2 Pokemon left? Because it's just all the work that the Dragapult and the Rotom did. You thought, well, these must be his last Pokemon, how he's acting. But then you see the Zacian come out, and then you see the Venusaur come out, and you think, wow, all that work done by the Rotom and the Dragapult, and an incredible way to pilot both of those and just really close down the game from just that lead alone and how he utilized it. Just dismantling the Colossal and really not allowing the Zacian to kind of get any kind of momentum at all in that game from Gabriel's side of the field.
Exactly, and don't forget, this is the last game for these players. One of them is going to stay in the competition, one of them is going to be knocked out. So let's jump into game 3 and see, with this really pivotal, important match, who is going to come out victorious on Chuy's side of the field. Rotom is back in action again with Dragapult. I don't see a reason to change that up. It worked phenomenally well in game 2. And sticking to the same thing as well is Gabriel Agati with the Colossal and the Urshifu.
Yeah, the same lead again. The Colossal obviously was in a little bit more of a difficult spot here, and it makes it a bit easier for Gabriel to maybe think about switching it out here, stalling out the Rotom max turns. If you've got something in the back that could come in, potentially take the Max Geyser a lot better, like the Salamence potentially. It's not a bad option here, but you've got to be wary as well because of the Dragapult support next to it. If you do see something like a Dragon Dart, you're not going to want Salamence to kind of come in on that, and then it really starts to kind of limit the options that you've got if you lose a Pokemon so early on in this game. But the Rotom again making things very difficult for that Colossal to perform as well as what we've known it to in previous matches, and you don't want a repeat of game 2 if you are Gabriel, so it'll be interesting to see how he approaches at least this turn going into it.
Yeah, a really nice play that Gabriel can make as well is if you think that the Rotom is going to Dynamax up, instead of trying to take damage, you can go for a Protect, and it's a really cheeky way to get a self-activation. Max Geyser will go through the Protect, it'll still do a little bit of damage, but critically it will activate the Steam Engine and the Weakness Policy, while Colossal takes relatively little damage, and it looks like that's possibly the strategy that Gabriel has gone for here. No Dynamax or Gigantamax from his side of the field, just going to be going for the Protect. Dragapult going for those Dragon Darts, however, so going to be trying to break the Focus Sash once again on that opposing Urshifu. And the thing I love about this move is it will always redirect around to the most favourable position for the Dragapult, so both get to target down into that opposing Urshifu. Urshifu able to go for the close combat as well, dealing some good damage to the Rotom, but Rotom does go for that Max Geyser. Has Chuy fallen into Gabriel's trap? Yes, he has.
Yeah, and just like you said, Lou, getting that activation without going for the Aqua Jet, and it's not too dissimilar to what damage you would take from the Aqua Jet anyway, really. Nice way to activate the Weakness Policy, get the Steam Engine, get set up with Colossal, and in a position where you can start, you know, potentially going for a Gigantamax. Maybe this time instead of the Overgrowth, you go for that G-Max Volcalith and get that residual damage kind of stacking on the field. The Urshifu in not a bad position because it's not going to go down to Dragon Darts this next turn. You know, it won't be redirected, especially if the Colossal does attack. But the Rotom probably going to be able to take at least an attack from the Colossal here, you would imagine. But probably not. It depends. It depends if the berry on the Rotom's activated by the Colossal. If it is, then it probably is able to take an attack from the Urshifu as well, but it will be very close, very fine margins coming down to it depending on what Gabriel decides to go for here.
And we need to consider how pivotal that close combat damage is as well. You know, that could possibly put it in range. It's going to be between a couple of HP points to how much this Volcalith is going to be able to do to that opposing Rotom, and maybe the close combat will be enough to put it in range. But like you said, Lee, we know that Rotom has the berry. If it is able to survive, it's going to be able to regain some HP. But Colossal is going for it here, going for that G-Max Volcalith that was actually going straight down into the opposing Dragapult. So maybe Gabriel wanted to make sure that more damage can be done onto that Rotom before able to capitalize on on going for a Volcalith, but it does leave Colossal incredibly exposed to something coming out from this Rotom in terms of the Max Geyser. Another close combat does come in. That certainly puts the Rotom in range of a KO, but has the Colossal left itself exposed to this Max Geyser lead?
It has indeed, and it will be going down, but not after taking down the Dragapult and getting that residual damage activated on the field through the G-Max Volcalith. And I think a really, really clever play here from Gabriel, because if you look back to game one and how well Chuy utilized his Dragapult and how disruptive it was to Gabriel's side of the field, I think getting rid of that Pokemon so early on kind of frees up things like Salamence to potentially come in and Zacian as well to come in and really not have to worry about taking, you know, damage from there. And especially the Urshifu doesn't have to worry about the Dragapult anymore, which is a huge bonus.
That is very true. The Dragapult was certainly disruptive in Game 2, and it's nice as well for Gabriel to try and get that KO on the board earlier here in this Game 3 than was possible in that Game 2. Both the Zacians are here on the field though, so they are both the replacements for the Pokemon lost previously, and they're going to be able to get their Intrepid Sword boosts up as well. Urshifu is going to be able to benefit from the rain up, but so is Rotom, but Rotom looking at very precarious with its health stat at the moment.
Yeah, it's very close to actually getting the it's berry activated. So you kind of want to make sure if you are hitting into that slot, you are knocking it out and not activating the berry, because it just gives it that bit too much health probably for it to get a couple of more attacks off potentially against what's coming out on the field. But we are seeing the opposing Zacian on Chuy's side of the field attack first, get that Behemoth Blade off into the Zacian on Gabriel's, and it's returning with the Behemoth Blade of its own and trading blows back and forth, these Zacians here.
Yeah, big damage a piece on a Zacian, onto another Zacian, and the Urshifu now wants to do some damage of its own, going for these Surging Strikes to pick up the KO with, of course, that guaranteed critical hit. So Gabriel really trying to target down against the Zacian, wants to remove it from the field and picks up a KO in this next turn as well. Rotom, however, does a little spin of delight and goes for the Max Lightning, this time connecting down into that Urshifu and removes that Pokemon from play as well. I mean, with the close combats, the Urshifu had taken a lot of drops as well. It gives Gabriel a nice opportunity to bring in his Pokemon from the back, but now both these trainers in a very dynamic Game 3 are down to their last two remaining Pokemon.
Yeah, and a really nice way to utilize the Urshifu in this game, Gabriel. You know, utilizing it to get the damage onto the Rotom and not like making it the centerpiece of your attention the whole time. Concentrating on the things that are next to it, the big important things that are next to it, like the Zacian there, getting the knockout there, leaving yourself with your own Zacian is huge. Also, the Dragapult being removed from the field, so you can guarantee that whatever you have, be it the Urshifu, be it the Salamence coming onto the field, you're not worrying about something else threatening you and outspeeding you pretty much every turn.
Exactly, and the Umbreon coming in here for Chuy as well. It's going to be happy that that close combating Urshifu has left the field. It does allow it to breathe a little bit of a sigh of relief. However, the Salamence has come into the frame. We saw how much damage the Salamence was able to deal out in Game 2.
Yeah, and you know, the Salamence with the Life Orb item, they're going to be providing a lot of power here. The Umbreon complicates things a little bit and definitely puts things in a little bit more favorable for Chuy, especially if it can take an attack from the Zacian, because it does have access to something like Yawn that could be very disruptive, and also foul play as well that you can utilize and hit the Salamence for good damage with. But it's all about what the Zacian kind of how it approaches this next turn and how you deal with the Umbreon, really, because it is a Pokemon that you kind of need to concentrate pretty much both your powerhouses into at once.
I like this play here from Gabriel, just going defensively, scouting at what the opponent wants to do, and I think critically allowing one more turn of those residual effects as well to deal some good damage to the opposing Pokemon, because every bit of free damage you can get here could allow you to have the Pokemon in range for either Salamence or the Zacian to be able to pick up a KO, particularly against that Rotom now. Anything that either of these Pokemon want to throw out are going to be able to pick up the KO against it, leaving Umbreon kind of the last Pokemon standing for Chuy.
Yeah, and that's it. I think it shows the importance of the G-Max Volcalith in making it sure, even if you're only getting one turn off with your G-Max Colossal, that is the turn that you're getting, because this residual damage, we've said it throughout today's broadcast, how important it is for these players to take advantage of this. And you can see here the Rotom potentially going to be knocked out this next turn from the residual damage and doing enough and a good amount of damage to that Umbreon as well.
Yeah, Sacred Sword doing a huge chunk of damage. Thankfully, Umbreon has its berry to munch on and regain some HP. But unless it's able to do something drastic in this particular turn, it's going to have to take another one of those in the next turn. Outrage connects though onto the Rotom, removing it from play, and this leaves the Umbreon really, really exposed. We know it can't protect or anything like that as well. So with two Pokemon on Gabriel Agati's side of the field, both outspeeding that Umbreon as well. Even though the Zacian has gone down, we know that the Outrage coming out from the Salamence on this next turn to an Umbreon that is unable to prevent itself from being attacked could be exactly what Gabriel Agati needs to close out the set.
Yeah, you would imagine so. The Outrage going to be definitely more than enough damage to pick up the knockout onto the Umbreon. And it's a nice option as well, you know, when you're in situations like this, it's the most powerful of dragon type attacks that you can really utilize with something like Salamence. So, you know, it does pick a random target, so sometimes it is a little bit risky, but in situations like this, you're like, well, it doesn't really matter at all because I've got the backing of that G-Max Volclith residual damage to kind of help me pick up knockouts where I'm not hitting into. And as we see, Gabriel in style with the Salamence, take the knockout on the Umbreon and take the set 2-1.
Absolutely phenomenal play there, and huge congratulations to Gabriel Agati, who's of course going to continue in on the competition.